Real estate investing can bring big reward and big risks. So know your risks. Welcome to the Real Estate Risk Report, the show for real-world insight on real estate investment risk. Now, here's your host, Lance Pederson.
Thank you for joining the Real Estate Risk Report. As always, I'm your host, Lance Pederson. So today I have with me Dr. Adam Gower with Gower Crowd. How you doing, Adam?
Fantastic. Thank you so much for having me on today.
Yeah, my pleasure. So, this is the first time Adam and I had the acquaintance of sort of meeting face to face. I've been following him sort of on LinkedIn and the social channels for quite some time. I think, we'll let him sort of introduce himself, but he's a very ardent sort of proponent of real estate crowdfunding. He covers it. He's commenting on it. And has been for a number of years now. And so I think, he works closely with a lot of real estate sponsors and trying to help them kind of get in the game and learn these new ways of connecting with investors. And so it's always sort of a hot topic these days as people look at, much of, the access to these investment opportunities, sort of the genesis or the first things we saw were sort of these real estate crowdfunding platforms like Realty Mogul or CrowdStreet or Real Crowd or, Fundrise, I guess, is a good example. So why don't you tell us a little bit about how in the world you got so enamored and interested with this niche that is sort of real estate crowdfunding?
It's a really good question, actually, and I'm glad that you asked. My background is almost exclusively commercial real estate, development and finance, and I had a very good career, actually, and did very well during the last downturn. Actually, of all things, and the last downturn being 2007, 2008, and when the market pulled out, I started to do some seed investing, actually. So I had a good run during the downturn. I worked on a lot of distressed stuff and worked for banks and some major private equity funds. It was a good time, actually, for me. Not for many people. It was.
Yeah, exactly.
And anyway, so when the market pulled out, all that good stuff went away, and I started doing seed investing, Lance, basically angel investing in these little startups. And it was fascinating to me, the world of digital marketing. I became quite enamored of it. I learned a new language, multiple new languages. I went to lectures and paid for courses on Google Analytics and funnel building and just about everything. I mean, it was just totally foreign to me. And as I was doing that, the Jobs Act was passed, which essentially, it's a lot more complicated than this, but essentially opened the gateway for commercial real estate for the first time to use these kinds of advanced marketing techniques. Mm-hmm. And so I just found myself at the intersection of commercial real estate and, by accident, really, having been doing some angel investing and seed investing, of digital marketing. This is about 6 years ago now. I'm trying to think when that was. About 6 years ago. So in the world of real estate, that's not long. In digital marketing, it's a lifetime. Yeah. A lot's changed in that time, and I've learned a lot. So that's kind of how I got to it. As simple as that.
Yeah. So these days, sort of like you spend, what do you spend the majority of your days doing then? So I know you see yourself as sort of an educator or whatever, but I mean, what does a typical day look like for Dr. Adam Gower?
Right. Well, a typical day. I'll tell you what, it's nice to meet you, Lance. We've never met before. I'm going to tell you exactly what my day looks like.
Very good.
I go to bed before my kids. Basically, I'm usually in bed between 8 and 8:30 in the evening, out flat. I don't watch television, so I don't spend time doing that. So I'm unconscious easily by 9, well out. At around usually 2 or 3 a.m., I am up, hyperactive. By 4 a.m., I am heavily caffeinated and at my computer. And then the work, which is what you're really interested in, not my sleep habits.
No, it's all good, man. It tells a lot about a person, right?
Then what happens is the work that I do is basically twofold. I love building really sophisticated digital marketing systems. And what we do is we produce and we create these for sponsors. And we want to obviously, we talk about investing as well. It's obviously very important.
Yeah.
We build these systems. And I like to build ever increasingly complicated ones and then test them. And then once I've tested them, seen that they work, then we roll them out to clients, to private clients.
Mm-hmm.
So I spend a lot of time building systems and then marketing, doing active marketing. So the way a digital marketing funnel works, and I'll just jump in because it doesn't matter. If you're a passive investor in real estate, by definition, you have a day job. Right?
Yeah.
And if you've got a day job, that means that you're in business doing something. You've got some kind of work, whatever it is. And everything that I'm about to describe applies equally to any business, any industry, it doesn't matter. But my focus is on commercial real estate. So I build these very complicated funnels that carry people through or carry prospects through them to a finish line, to a point of sale at some point. So that's part of what I do. The other part of what I do is I work very hard to drive people into the funnel. So the one thing is building the machine and then driving people to it. So at the moment, we just finished building a really good funnel. Actually, it's really cool. I'm really happy with the way it turned out. Now what I'm doing is working on marketing. So that's part of the business. Mm-hmm. The other side of the business is I do teach. So I do live teachings, group education. I also do personal one-on-one education as well. And the main core of our business is building these same systems once tested, field tested and proven for clients. So we build them for clients. And so that is the bulk of the work that I do is doing the same, what I just described for private clients.
Yeah. No, and I think it's relevant, right? And you think about it as, like you said, the people moving through this funnel, for the most part, are probably passive investors. I mean, they're those who are interested in getting involved and investing into these opportunities, correct?
That's
Real estate
right.
syndications.
Exactly.
And so you being a marketer, then that means that you have to be acutely aware of what that target is really searching for, they're looking for, the questions they have, right? Those sorts of things. So from that perspective, I mean, what is it that sort of, lures them into your funnel, so to speak, that what's at the heart of this? Like, what are the benefits, or what are the things that, from your perspective as a marketer, that passive investors are sort of looking for? Is it high returns? Is it lengthy track record? There's substance here. And what are you sort of as a marketer, what are you playing into to sort of, bring them into your funnels?
Okay. So I'm typing stuff up. I'm not like sending text messages, right?
If you can multitask, hey.
No, I'm jotting notes down to make sure that I can answer all your questions. Right. So actually, interesting question. You're asking about what do investors look for? And as you were asking that question, I can't remember how you phrased it at the beginning. I actually went in a slightly different direction. The way that I will answer that question straight up for you, because I will tell you what investors do look for. We do a lot of qualitative and qualitative research with investors. So I know some specifics as well, but this is how I think of it. So one of the things that in any business that you want to keep in mind is who your ideal customer is, called your customer client avatar. And in commercial real estate, you're looking for your investor avatar. Who is the ideal investor for you? All right, what characteristics does that person have? Where do they live? What gender are they? How old are they? What's challenging them? What do they read? How do they get news sources, et cetera, et cetera. This whole picture, because when you create an avatar, you can speak to that person, because that's the person who is going to be most attracted to you. right? That's the person you want to educate. That's who you want to focus all your attention on, right? Whatever business you're in, that's who you want to focus your business on. So you have to have that person in mind. So a lot of what we do with real estate sponsors is we help them to understand, not a lot of it, but part of what we do is help them understand who's your ideal investor. What does that person look like? So we can craft messaging specifically oriented to that person. The answer to your question, though, is what are investors looking for? Guess what? They actually are looking for their ideal sponsor avatar. So if you were to line up every single sponsor in America, or let's put it this way instead, actually, if you were to ask an investor, what is the ideal sponsor? What does that sponsor look like? Who's the ideal sponsor for you? You might say they have certain amounts of track record, that they have, they're in this geographical region, they're investing in this particular asset class. They communicate in a way that I like, that conforms with the way that I like to communicate. They don't want to call me on the phone all the time, right? They've got everything that they've got. I can access it on the phone. I can pick up my phone, and if I've got a quiet moment, I can read an article on the website. Whatever their avatar is, that is what investors are looking for. So I think it behooves investors. By the way, it's the first time I've ever spoken in these actual terms. I'm kind of making this up as I go on, but it's true.
Yeah.
Not making it up. I'm crystallizing. These are thoughts crystallized. Totally. It's absolutely true that if an investor feels overwhelmed about where they want to look, they should think first. All right, what kind of real estate am I looking at? What makes me comfortable? Am I looking for passive income? Am I looking for wealth? Am I looking to build my wealth? Am I looking to get in and out? Am I looking to time the market? Am I looking for long term, right? What am I looking for? What's driving my desire to invest in real estate? And then really drill down on that. And then identify sponsors who fit that mold. That's a good exercise to go through.
Yeah.
But what you were actually asking for, I mean, that's what what you really wanted me to answer was, what are they looking for? So I'll tell you what investors typically are looking for, right?
Yeah.
Once you get past the sponsor avatar, the number one, there are two things. Number one, they typically look for returns, and sadly are drawn to internal rate of return. IRR is a kind of benchmark for everything. It's a paradoxical measure to be looking at.
Yep.
And secondly, communication. So in the the studies that we've done, sponsors who communicate the best, either passively on their website with good quality content, high value educational content, and through email communication, are what investors want. Those are the two things. So returns, unfortunately, oriented by IRR, and good communications, which is a good thing.
Yeah, no, that makes a lot of sense. I mean, because, for me, much like you, I mean, spending a lot of time, was in the thick of it when the Jobs Act, we were, for one of our investment funds, one of the first ever to check the 506C box in the Form D, like the day we could. And, so much like, been contemplating this for a long time. I mean, one of the beauties of real estate investing is that, in real estate in general, right, is that it's highly fragmented, right? I call it fragmentation is a feature of real estate. And that means that it's somewhat inefficient, right? And therefore that's where the opportunity lies oftentimes, but at the heart of it is that, you need someone who's got their ear to the ground in these fragmented markets, who's aware of the opportunities that exist. And that's the real value that a sponsor, brings, or an operator brings to the table, is that, they wake up every morning and their day is lined up different than like your day, right? Their day is it's just, all right, what opportunities are in there? Talking to brokers. I mean, I jumped on a clubhouse meeting, at the new social media sort of thing. And there's a bunch of, commercial real estate guys who are just talking about, I call them deal junkies. They're just deal junkies. I mean, they can't stop talking about deals. They love deals, right?
So let me ask you about, I'm going to jump in right now. I'm probably going to demonstrate one of my greatest flaws by asking you this right now. So I have a friend of mine. He actually, I'm going to mention him by name because he's a really good guy. He's VOA. He's the White House correspondent for VOA in Washington. A fellow called Steve Herman, and Steve has always been way ahead of the curve. I remember when he and I were in Japan in the 90s. His 2-year-old kid had a blog. First of all, what is a blog? I had no idea. And he's always been a little bit ahead. And I've always been skeptical. But now I've come to figure if Steve's talking about it, it means there is a massive wave heading towards us. I've learned that over the years. Now, this Clubhouse thing, a few people have contacted me on this. This is what I mean when I say kind of troglodyte mentality, but as advanced as I am with digital marketing these days. Somebody contacted me and said, oh, yeah, have you heard about Clubhouse? Fantastic. So I wrote back and I said, well, what's it all about? He said, well, it's like live chat rooms. I said, what does that mean? You actually speak it? Like, what is that? Is that like a kind of an endless Zoom call or something? Is that like what he said? Yeah. Lance, I cannot think of anything more disruptive of my life right now than actually having multiple endless Zoom calls going at the same time. Cannot imagine. How would anyone get anything done? You talk about a bunch of people, they're there, deal junkies. No, they're not. They're on bloody Clubhouse nattering. They're not out there trying to find deals. They're BSing with each other. Like they're at the country club on a Friday, on a Sunday afternoon. Get on with some work. Stop talking about it.
There's no doubt. It is definitely bizarre. But it points to the fact that, and I've got this talk I'm putting together, and it's called sponsors are from Mars, investors are from Venus, and it's your guide to surviving due diligence, right? Because I think the point is, right, and this is kind of where I'm headed with you, because I know that you're really into this stuff. It's just you've got this person, like you said, is that they're looking for return, right? They're looking for return. Yeah. And they just want someone that can communicate, right? Like, just keep me posted, because it's a bit of a white knuckle sort of ride, right? If that dude, this deal junkie we're talking about, in their mind, this is what I've heard from them. I mean, I've worked with hundreds of these guys, right? To their mind, they're going, listen, man, I found this killer piece of real estate. I bought it at a great price, below replacement costs or whatever, you know what I mean? And they're just so proud of themselves because they love it. And in their mind, they're thinking, you should be freaking happy that, I'm going to deliver an amazing return, right? And so to them, it's all about the results, right? Like, I'm going to deliver that thing that you searched for. You wanted an 18 IRR. I'm going to do a 25, right? Like, this is, and I know I'm going to, but this is what's going to happen, and you should be happy. Well, and of course, then they forget about the communicating part, right? They forget that, hey, these people are sitting there going, like, have you run off with my money? Like, how's the project going? Like, are you, what's going on? Right. And so this is that disconnect of, like, it is that simple. Yeah. They're drawn in by returns because they clearly are looking to get ahead. You want, it's the other crazy thing, the whole GameStop thing. Like, people are looking for, how can I, make money fast, right? You can't stop humans from thinking that way. But then ultimately they're going, but please just communicate, right? So, and communicate with me so that I know what's going on, and I don't.
Lance, the kind of communication I'm talking about is not live chit-chatting.
No, it's not.
I'm talking about,
how is the project going?
How's the project going? Please don't be spending all your time, online doing that kind of thing. Yeah. So, but Clubhouse was just a bit of a distraction. I didn't mean to go down that.
No. But yeah.
Communication, the two key points, there are two types of communication. One is pre-investment, one is post-investment. Pre-investment communication is the way that a sponsor teaches you who they are and their view of the world.
Yeah.
Once you invest, you want a sponsor who stays on top, keeps you informed, and most importantly, informs you when things aren't going so well. This is what we advise clients. Look, if you've got a big vacancy, if you're a commercial real estate, like an office guy, you got a vacancy, tell your investors, we got a vacancy. They, the company went bust, or they moved out, they downsized or something. This is what we're doing to fill that. As long as you're communicative, even of good or bad news, it really doesn't matter. Investors like that. They want to hear the stories. Everybody knows that the world isn't perfect, right? And so they don't expect it. They don't expect a sponsor. I think it's a mistake for a sponsor to attempt to cast a rose-colored tint over everything that they do. It's unrealistic. And anybody that does, frankly, you gotta wonder, right? What? It's not real. It's not practical that the world can be as that real. It's not true that real estate is easy. It is difficult. It comes with warts, and you got to be able to and willing to talk about them.
Yeah, and I agree, but it's my sense too, and maybe you can corroborate this or dispute it, I guess, is that I'm assuming that you work with quite a few people on the investor relations side of the house.
Yeah.
And my experience is that when it comes to most IR people, investor relations people, and communicate with investors, it's like walking on freaking eggshells. They are convinced that investor is going to just lose their mind, that they're going to be so upset, right? And I think that you see that. That's part of the problem, right? Is that it is sort of I don't want to alert people. I don't want to say something that then's going to cause them to, get upset. Obviously you have the guys who are it doesn't matter. They're just wired to say, I'm going to tell them what's going on. It is what it is. And, I don't want to, spend a bunch of time trying to spin it. So what is your sense? I mean, this is why we bring some of these things up, right? Because passive investors, if you're doing that, and I guess this is why we talk about this and why I'm using the concept of sponsors are from Mars, investors are from Venus, because it's the miscommunication, right? So each side has something they want, right? Or their needs and desires, right? But if one is getting all worked up and thinking that the sky is falling with every little piece of bad news, then that shouldn't be surprising that the other side is saying, well, note to self, every time I do go and share with them, they tend to overreact.
Yeah. So here's what I would say about that. We're talking from the investor perspective. This is really key. That real estate is incredibly difficult. No matter what anybody says, there is no easy dollar in commercial real estate, period. And as a passive investor, you have to understand that. It might be easy for you to write a check. Yeah, of course, it's easy to do that. You don't have to actually go out and do the work, but you have to recognize that the returns that you're going to get are utterly dependent on the success of the person you're investing with and their ability basically to put out fires on a constant basis. That's really all my experience has been. Basically, it's the manager's position or the key guy's position is putting out fires. That's all it's about. It's like helping staff manage problems as they come up. Nothing ever goes smoothly. So it's very important to keep in mind that the average investor, high net worth investor, accredited investor, has it's not the average, the vast majority have a degree, a university degree, and a large number, 60% or more, have advanced degrees. They either have advanced academic degrees or professional qualifications of some sort. Put another way, they are highly educated. And if you are a highly educated person, then recognize that real estate isn't easy. And when you are looking at sponsors and deciding who to invest in, look for those who are transparent. If you're talking to somebody who is afraid of their own shadow, who is walking on eggshells, who's worried that you're going to get upset, that's probably not somebody you want to invest with. That, of all the things you might want to look at, the first thing that you should do, by the way, when you look at investing in a deal is look at the sponsor. Forget anything else. It's better, they say, as I'm quoting something that's been said 1,000 times, it's better to invest in a mediocre deal with an excellent sponsor, with a first-rate sponsor, than it is to invest in a first-rate deal with a mediocre sponsor, because a mediocre sponsor could blow it up. But an excellent sponsor, first-rate sponsor, won't do that. So you want to start at that point and identify who communicates well, who is not afraid of the rough edges around real estate, and who is mature enough, frankly, and confident enough in their abilities to be candid and transparent about the challenges that they face on a day-to-day basis, and report those to you and educate you about what they are. Because that is what real estate is. Real estate is dealing with problems. These are huge, complicated, multi-million dollar, multi-10, sometimes hundreds of millions of dollars projects that have thousands of moving parts, and those moving parts go wrong all the time, and they need to be controlled and managed properly. And that's what you should be looking for in a sponsor, and somebody who's willing to tell you what those are. It's, frankly, as an educated person, it should be fascinating to you to understand the challenges and what it takes to overcome them, right? And so you want to find somebody who's willing to talk about that.
Yeah, and I agree. And that's, like I said, hence the name of the show, Real Estate Risk Report, right? Because it ultimately, the thing that makes, from the mediocre or bad sponsor to the one who's excellent is their ability to fully appreciate the risks that are being taken, that are borne, and how to mitigate them, right? So that is the investing, right? Is this understanding how they do that, right? It's all about, there's risk, it's inherent. That's why the return that could be quoted is double digits or whatever, right? Is because there's some risk involved, and it's the ability to execute, and mitigate the risks as they come up, right? And avoid them, right? And so it's that's at the heart of it. But like you said, it should interest you, because when you think of it that way, then it's just understanding what the moving parts are. Right.
Yeah, you want to know what you're investing. I mean, I look, when I was at high school, every high schooler and every grade schooler, whatever you call it, hates education, right? They detest it. But as you get older and you start to make money, you start to realize the benefits of education and of learning. And everybody thirsts for that in some way or another. You want to improve yourself so you can do your business better. I love history. So I'm just a history. I love history. So I like to read history books. And these days when I watch television, I sit down, I don't know, I think we have Apple TV. I think I have about 4,000 channels each, with 4,000 channels inside them, with hundreds of programs inside each one of those, like the cosmos of television. And I can never find anything to watch. Yeah. That's how I do. Because I'm always looking for something that I want to feel like at the end of, I've learned, I've grown as a result. I can take something away from it, not just a cheap thrill. And that's what people, I think, enjoy. And that is part of the role of the sponsor, is to provide that kind of education to their investors. It's a sign of respect as well, frankly. You don't want to be entertained. You want to be educated by your sponsor. So that in return will give you more, because it's good for the sponsor to do that, because when you do that, it predisposes investors to invest with them. It's a harmonious cycle, virtuous cycle of communication.
Yeah, I agree. Because what I say, I always tell people, it's like trust is the transaction. It's not them giving you the money and wiring the funds into the deal. It's that you've consummated a trust transaction. How do you earn their trust? You demonstrate competency, you educate, they earn your respect, you have authority in their eyes. That's all the things, and and other things that, like, we do in my day job, right, to try to help shortcut that, like, run background checks on you ahead of time so they're not worried if you're a crook. Verify your track record so that they know whatever the claims you're making are accurate, right? Then they don't have to worry about that, right? And you do the things, you educate, and you do those things. And at some point, they're going to say, I trust these guys.
I'm going to interrupt you, actually, Lance. So this is your podcast, and you're always very kind to have people on, and you want to know what they do. All right. So it's kind of gives us an opportunity to, show our stuff. But have you ever had a podcast guest ask you what you do?
No, not
good. Right. Let's start. There's always a first time for everything. So let me ask you about Verivest. I've got the website up. I have an ulterior motive about this, by the way. First of all, my ulterior motive is, one, I'm unbelievably pressed for time today. And while you were talking, I was thinking, all right, how am I going to get a few questions in about Verivest afterwards and still have time? And then it occurred to me, because of what we're talking about, actually, I could ask you now. Because you know what? Everybody wants to know. So if you don't mind, I really am interested.
Yeah, go for it.
Right. So I'm looking over here. Criminal history, sponsor track record, and experience. Quite serious. Can you tell me exactly what you do and how you do that?
Yeah.
Like, how deep do you get?
Yeah, I mean, I think for us, right, it starts with the principles of whoever the sponsor is, right? And so it's running a background check to make sure that, hey, they haven't any personal business bankruptcies. They haven't had, in the last 7 years, they haven't They haven't been accused of fraud, some unopened fraud case, the SEC regulatory sanctions, right? Felony, convictions, stuff like the stuff that you're kind of like red flags that just DQ people.
Okay.
Right. And then from there, it's here's my track record. We've done all these wonderful things.
So how do you do that?
How do we do the track record?
Yeah.
So for us, we look at it and say, you said you bought this on X date and you sold, for X, and you sold it on Y date and sold it for Y, whatever. So for us, it's give us closing statements, give us the stuff. We're going to go look at public record. We're going to triangulate these things because you probably, and I think you may have mentioned it, that MG Capital deal, with the SEC, threw the hammer down on that guy. I mean, when you look at this, and the same thing with Madoff, right, is that you had to make one phone call to basically stop the Madoff Ponzi scheme to DTCC and say, do these trades exist? I mean, are these assets real? And they would have told you, who's Bernie Madoff? Like, who? No, we don't have.
So actually, let me ask this then. If somebody had very vested NG Capital, how would you have uncovered? What's the process then? You send out a questionnaire
from day one, right? Because he used a falsified track record for Fund 1 and Fund 2. And if he would have brought that to us and said, hey, I want to become a Verivest verified sponsor, I would have said, give us your track record. Tell us, give us what you just said.
You have a questionnaire, do you?
Yeah,
like a form.
So we basically send them the list, right? But ultimately, that's that one spreadsheet. Here's all the deals we bought, which is what he did, right? And said, look at all these deals. I've done $1 billion worth of transactions. Okay. So we would have said, okay, that's interesting. Give us the closing statements. Give us the information. We're going to go look this stuff up. I'm going to call the counties. We're going to ping the counties, and he would have been sunk because we would have said these transactions never happened, or they didn't happen for the dollar amounts that you're saying that happened. So
let me ask you this question. Actually, take on the next step. So, how many sponsors say yes, we'll do this? Like, it must be a tough sell because it's so easy to raise money without the need, right? It's got to be a tough sell for you. How just to be frank with me, what do you find is that? Like, it must be I'm just saying, it must be a tough sell.
I think for many of them is that when you find yourself saying out loud to people that you have a proven track record, that you're transparent, and you make claims to people. So there are sponsors out there who say those things out loud and mean them genuinely. And they see other people making those claims that they know that they're bald-faced liars, right? That they're just making crap up. And that's the narrative in the industry, right? So how have we been able to do it? We go and we talk to people, sponsors, about this. And those who have nothing to hide are like, dude, this is a way for me to get a leg up. Right. This is a way for me to demonstrate to my existing investors and prospective investors that we're not just paying lip service to this concept of being transparent and to have a proven track record. We're willing to demonstrate it because we've got, we are what we are, and now we've got validation. So,
but isn't it an onerous process? I mean, I haven't seen your questionnaire. I've seen others.
No, man. If you've done, you come to us within 7 business days. We could have your whole profile up and running, on our platform with a verified track record. It's not onerous if you're organized, right? If you've done it, you give us the stuff, and we can go and triangulate it, and we put it up on the site. Others, what happens, right, is that it's part of the process, right? Is that if you're ever going to, everyone in the space, sponsors especially, they're looking for these programmatic relationships. I want institutional, they want easy button. So yeah, you said it's easy to raise money. I would say maybe it's easy for some guys. It's not easy for everyone. That's why they're paying you to try to attract more investors, right? So they always want more relationships. So for us, when some guys come to us, it's more about us saying, if you want those things, if you want capital raising and to be more efficient and to have the capital when you need it, then you need to be prepared. And any sophisticated investor, when they're trying to do diligence on you, is going to ask for this information. And if you can't provide it, then you're kind of, you're DQ'd right then and there. You go through this process with us, we're going to help you get organized, right? So it's as much about preparation as it is about us being sort of like, trying to put, when they say they don't have the stuff and they're not organized, I'm like, listen, it's a process. Let's get you up there. You can run background checks. If you're not a crook and there's no red flags, you got nothing.
That's easy enough to do. That you can do,
right? Mm-hmm. So that's how we view it, is that it's about helping sponsors, in this industry in particular, mature, right? Because that's what's happening, is that, to your point, there's more and more and more retail investors and investors of all shapes and kinds that are looking for more people to invest with, right? It's this whole groundswell that's occurring. And so in order for the industry to mature with it, and because most people operate underneath sort of the regulated line of 150 million, SEC's not overseeing this activity. So
that's exactly right. So who is your customer primarily? Who drives this? Is this sponsor? Is it investors? You have like investor groups coming to you saying, "Hey, look, we're willing to invest with this guy, but we want a very vest stamp on it. Can you go and get one for it?" How does it work?
That's where it came from. What happened was that we at our heart are fund administrators, and what happened was that I kept having more and more inquiries from investors asking me for our client list. So they're saying, "I love alternative investments. I love real estate investments. I want to know who's out there, and I want to make more investments. Can you send me your list?" So I'm like, "Well, I mean, maybe." I don't know. It's kind of weird, right? Like, and they kept saying that. And then I began to say like, well, what are you looking for? Like, what is your criteria? To your point, right? What is your sponsor avatar? And then I said, well, what would stop you from investing? What are your concerns? What are your fears? And universally, nearly, they're all like, "Hey man, I wish I could run background checks on guys. That's kind of what makes me nervous. I wish that I could like corroborate all these claims they're making, like their track record." So for me, that's sort of where you put it all together and say, well, what if a centralized sort of Switzerland of the ecosystem, which is what we were as administrators already, did this on behalf of both sides of the table? What if we did that? So it's done once. It's a living track record. Not everyone's reinventing the wheel every time that you're, asking the same questions and ask for the same stuff. We could just do that once and get people closer to, we call it shortcut the time to trust. How do we get it to where you can go from just meeting the guy to getting comfortable enough to make an investment sooner than you would have without, our service?
It's really interesting. What does it mean monitored? Sorry, like totally all over it. What does that mean?
Well, then the monitor piece, right, is that I made the investment. Who's making sure that all the money is going where it should be going? Because for most investors, they can't tell the difference. So monitoring is that once a quarter, they give us the bank statements, the GL detail, the financial statements, and we make sure that their asset management fee was calculated per the operating agreement. We make sure that that there's no related party transactions that weren't disclosed, where they're basically borrowing money from the entity and and buying boats, and it's just making sure that everything
as you do,
Yeah, well, as some people do, unfortunately.
Yes, unfortunately.
Because in this business, you end up with, especially the syndicator. I mean, you end up, if you're successful, you've got LLCs everywhere. I mean, you've got 50, 75 LLCs. I mean, they're just everywhere. And what happens is that they start to, and I've seen this as an administrator, you see the activity. Well, what if we've got this CapEx budget we're not going to be using over here for 3 years. Well, why don't we just borrow money from that entity over to this entity?
I know. It's called cross-collateralization.
It's illegal because it's there's no one in between it, right? Like they can, it's once again, it's just, that's the kind of stuff that most people, unlike that MG Capital dude, they don't wake up in the morning deciding, they didn't start out saying, "I'm going to defraud people." What happens was they started as good people who, were trying to do the right thing, who got into a pinch, and one little thing led to a little bigger thing and a bigger thing. And next thing you know, they can't recover from it, right? Like whatever they've done, robbing Paul to pay Peter, Peter to pay Paul, sort of gets away from them. And the whole thing kind of falls apart, right? Whereas we're the deterrent, right? You're not going to do that. We protect yourself from doing dumb stuff if someone's watching over you. So,
all right, I've got more questions about this, but not for the podcast. Thanks for filling out all that detail. I just want to ask a few rapid fire questions afterwards once we finish. What else do you want to know about me?
Well, the last thing I want to know is just your take on sort of real estate crowdfunding in particular. What's the trend? Like, where does it go from here? What's going to happen?
Yeah. So, look, it's going to continue growing. There's no doubt. And it is, look at what's going on. By the way, I've no idea. I am not a stock guy at all. I gave up even trying to do that consciously many, many years ago when I discovered real estate and somebody was talking about stocks and bonds. I knew that if I started looking at stocks, I'd be so obsessed looking at them every day, trying to track what's going on, that I'd have to do it professionally. And I just thought it'd be too stressful because it's every second you're going to be like driven mad. Is it up or down? So I don't know anything about stocks, but I am fascinated by what's going on with Robinhood and this whole thing at the moment with GameStop.
Yeah.
I learned it from my 11-year-old. So, I posted this morning on LinkedIn, something's going on in the world.
Yeah.
Something screwy when your 11-year-old is espousing the benefits of short selling over dinner. Right? Exactly. Quite knowledgeably as well, I must say.
Yeah.
And and that really speaks to the power of the crowd.
Yeah.
So I think it's just it's just going to keep growing. It's still nascent stages.
Yeah.
Real estate crowdfunding, very early stages, going to keep on growing.
I agree that I would agree with that. So it's been a pleasure. Yeah. Thanks for flipping the tables. It's a lot of fun to hang out with you. And
I'm not done with you yet,
Yeah, very raw. But for the rest of you, we're done. So, take care. Hope you enjoyed the episode. And until next time, thanks so much again, Adam.
My pleasure entirely. Thanks, Lance.